Alright, so apparently people like to define, common people like to define fluency as the amount of words that a person knows. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue with that, but honestly, I want to give you my seeing of fluency. And remember, I'm a teacher, okay, and the things I'm going to be talking to you about is also not something I made up, but it's actually, there is a field called psycholinguistics that studies that, okay? What is fluency? Because if you go on some certificate, I don't know, like, you know, this sheet where they say what your fluency level is, and they say, okay, so you're just as good as the native as a native speaker, or you can do this and that. And what does it mean you're just as good as a native speaker? Because a native speaker can speak a language differently, right? If you ask a schooler, they will probably not be just, they won't speak the language as good as well as I don't know, a lawyer, right? So people do have a different language command, and everything depends on the education, on the country's economical system, etc., right? There are so many factors. So let's break down speaking, building sentences, and I actually mean speaking, I don't mean writing, okay? So let's break down speaking into very, into a step-by-step operation. Let's make a very simple sentence without actually making one. I just want to show you how much it takes to build a 4-word sentence in English. On top of that, English is not your native language. That means that, most likely, right? So that means that you're going to put in even more effort into building a sentence like that based on what your native language is, okay? Because the knowledge that your pre-knowledge, okay, is different. When building a sentence, there are several operations happening in your brain, okay? And first, let's say you want to tell a story, okay? So you have to think of an actor. And here is when an interesting question arises. Do you actually think of an actor first, or do you think of the action first, right? Because depending on what your native language is, you will think of different things. But there is a specific word order that forces you to choose one first, okay? That means that you have to shift the way you think a bit, right, in order to produce sentences faster in English, okay? So that is already some cognitive load here. In German, for example, it's quite common to put anything in the first place, right? And then there is an action. So you would probably think of an action first, right? Because if you say today and then the verb, yes, the verb is in its common place. It's in the second place, okay? It's in the second position, but still, it's like it forces you to think of a story differently, okay? It's not the same. It's just linearly building a sentence. So like I said, psycholinguists actually test it, and what they do is they show some pictures, right, to people, and if they show it to to English native speakers, they now I'm mixing languages. So if they show this picture to an English speaker, a native speaker, right, they will naturally look at the person first, right? Because it's common for English to follow the actor, action, object order, okay? Which is not the case for other languages, where people's eyes will naturally shift to the action first, like kicking the ball. You know, it's not the same. Like if you show a picture of a man kicking a ball, right? Then they will not look at the man; they will look at the at the foot or something. All right, so we're gonna stick to this order, all right? Because we know it's common for English. So what happens now? I know who the person is, right? Or maybe I know who I want to talk about. Now I have to choose the category of number, and I have to do it before I actually choose my verb, because depending on what the category of number is, right, your verb can have a different ending. For example, if the tense is going to be in present simple, right, you would have to add the s ending. You chose the category of number. Now we can proceed to the verb. Now, as for the verb, first of all, you need to choose the correct verb, okay? Let's say you did it. Then you think of the tense, right? And then you also think of the category of number, and then you also think of the conjugation, right? And depending on what tense it is, maybe you don't have to follow each of these steps, but you know, a verb is commonly followed by an object, and first you need to choose an article, right? And you have two options to choose from, and then let's say you want to add some extra information, so you want to characterize the object and you add an adjective to it. okay, now you maybe have to change the article, right? And this is like such a simple sentence. But if you actually list all the operations you have to go through, oh, by the way, if you, when adding the adjective, let's say you were learning French, in that case, you would also have to think of the position, where to put the adjective, what ending to add, right? Because it does make a difference whether it's feminine or not, or if it's plural or not, etc., right? So you have to consider so many things when building just a four-word sentence, which is not a lot at all, right? Let's go back to English. Let's say you have to choose the tense, then you have 12 tenses to choose from, okay? And maybe you also have to decide whether it's passive or active voice. This is where we are getting to the point here, because many people, when building a sentence, they get confused by the amount of tenses that there are in English, because there are 12, okay? And it looks like a big number, but in reality it's not. And the only reason why it's a big number for you is because you're guessing. When building a sentence, I see it with my students, instead of thinking, instead of following the rules like a cookbook, like really it's just a recipe. You learn it once, but people are lazy. Let's be honest. People are lazy. They can get a ready solution, like a solution to a problem, and just because they didn't come up with it themselves, okay? Because they got it, like they got it from someone, and it's been prepared for them. So they didn't put in as much cognitive effort into it as they could have. So they got a solution ready, and they forget about it. And it's natural, okay? It happens to many people. Some people are more diligent, some people are more careful with this, but many people are not. And so this is when they forget about the fact that all those rules exist, and they start guessing when building a sentence, when choosing the right tense, when thinking of the endings, right? They start guessing and they'd be like, oh, well, it's maybe it's this one, and then I'll check this one, and then maybe if my teacher says it's correct, then I guess it's right? And I'm not gonna remember why that was the correct tense. I'm not gonna remember why I chose this rule, etc. But this is exactly the recipe that you have to follow. This is the reason why you have to learn the rules in the beginning, so that next time the only questions you ask yourself is it future? Is it present? Is it past? Now, depending on the answer, you only start looking for the tenses in that one group, okay? And then is the action continuous? Is it kind of, I don't know, regular? Or not, or is it like the perfect category of the action? We just imagine this whole process as a loop, okay? You make a guess, and then you make a mistake. So let's say you made a mistake, but you proceed talking, and now there is a mistake. We don't know which one it is, we don't know what it's connected to, but that's exactly the issue. Because you don't know what it's connected to, next time you make a sentence, you're gonna make the same mistake. Maybe you're lucky, maybe your sentence will be correct, but because you don't know why this sentence is correct and that sentence is wrong, you're gonna be making those mistakes. It's just lucky, you just get lucky that you built a sentence correctly. And now, depending on your natural intelligence, either you're gonna learn that, okay, now if this was right, this is just how I'm gonna speak in that context, okay? And then you eventually learn talking, like you actually learn, and then you eventually learn speaking grammatically correctly. But that's rare that it happens to people like that. Usually it happens to children like that. That's how they acquire language naturally. But that's not the case with adults, okay? So my point here is that instead of guessing and, having to repeat this whole process over and over again, you have to follow the recipe. You have to follow the steps. And it will first make you speak slower. You're not gonna you're gonna feel like you have to think a lot, but that's exactly what you have to do. You have to think in the beginning, and then you have to produce, okay? And once you start doing that, the whole process, the whole thing is gonna get automated, okay? And the less time it takes you to think, the less mistakes you make, the less operations you have to even think of, the more fluent you are. So fluency for me, personally, is this set of operations that have been automated. Now, how do you get to this automatization process? That's what I've told you, right? You have to work on your mistakes. You have to actually see your mistakes. As I've been thinking of this whole thing, I asked myself a question. So do you actually need a teacher? Considering you can ask ChatGPT, right? You can ask Gemini. Like, there are so many opportunities you have nowadays. You can even practice talking to them, right? I believe you do, because as talking, when you talk to ChatGPT or to Gemini, whatever you have, it's still talking to a machine. Like, you kind of know it's not real, okay? And trust me, it hurts the most when you actually make the mistakes. Like, when you make the mistakes and somebody points it out to you. And Gemini is gonna point it out to you nicely, right? ChatGPT is gonna talk to you nicely. That's how they're designed to work, okay? And that's not the human reaction you get. And I mean, I'm not saying that somebody has to yell at you, but sometimes maybe they do, So that's kind of the thing. Like, people can adapt to other people better, right? Because they kind of, like, I don't know, there is some human interaction which I believe helps other people to learn. That's one thing. Like, my key point here is that this human interaction with each other, this human interaction actually makes this learning process more memorable, okay? And this is what makes you, progress, I believe. Another thing is you also have to pay money for it, so you're motivated to stop paying money for it. A teacher can correct your mistakes, but a teacher can also give you a hint on where you made the mistake. And then they don't actually correct you, because that's the work you have to do, okay? Your job is to understand that you made a mistake, think of why you made that mistake, but you can do it later on in your free time. And then you actually work on the self-correction. Self-correction is super important, okay? So, and then they share you more tips. And what they do is, and they give you some extra information that helps you to skip that place, maybe, So next time, you don't have to go like point 1, point 2, point 3. You can build a bridge between point 1 and point 3, right? So they help you acquire this knowledge faster, I believe. You can argue with me on this one. You can argue, no, it's impossible to learn so fast because I can't, or because a friend of mine couldn't. You can argue with me about that. That's completely fine. It's just that I want you to think logically. I want you to break things into steps, and I want you to personally think of the effort you are putting into it and ask yourself, if you're not managing to do it, then ask yourself, why is that the case? Okay? All right. Bye-bye.